Hey, it's Alvaro here. Something a little bit different today. Jen and I were recently guests on the Reverse Engineering Plus Plus podcast. You can find them at REPP.show. They're relatively new, and many of you may already know about it, but just in case, we're cross-posting the episode here so you can listen to it. But definitely go check out their website and listen to their past episodes. We look forward to all the new stuff they come up with. But yeah, just wanted to share. Enjoy.
Hello, it is Friday, 24 January 2025, and welcome to the Reverse Engineering Plus Plus podcast, where we talk reverse engineering, forward embedded development, and all things STEM which come across our workbench. In this episode, we have a treat especial. We have two awesome folks, Jen Castillo, also known as Rebelbot Jen, and Alvaro Prieto, the dynamic duo behind the unnamed Reverse Engineering podcast. In this episode, we dive into the origin story of their show, a little bit about the Mountain View Reverse Engineering meetup where they met and started off their journey, and just in general, the weird and wonderful world of engineering, including engineering management and some soft skill stuff. We also talk their favorite RE tools and get some cool stories from their own personal experiences and the motivation for what keeps them coming back to the bench. So grab your oscope, load up the debugger, and let's jump in. It is awesome to have you guys here. Del and I don't know, probably, what do you say, Del? Maybe like 20 or 21. We had just been talking in the lab where we were working a lot, and we always get into like some deep dive nerdery. So we were like, hey, maybe we should take this to a podcast. And I came across your guys's and have been a huge fan ever since. So thank you for all the work that you guys have done and been a huge inspiration to us to get this one started.
Awesome.
It's always nice to meet people who actually listen to the podcast. I don't think we do it as often as we would like.
We definitely feel you and hear you there. So I guess we've already started, but as a level set, I know that all of us have diverse interests, background, and experiences, and I think it's very likely that all of us are pretty good at squirreling too. So I'll try to be a good boy and not go too far off into too many tangents. As four of us, I'll pony up together here. But so obviously me and Del, longtime listeners and lovers of your guys' show, the Unnamed Reverse Engineering podcast. You guys have been going now since 2017, is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, no, that's right. Shockingly correct.
Almost 8 years.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, like, what was the can you tell us the story? Because I don't think I've heard it anywhere of the podcast genesis. What inspired you guys to start the show?
Well, I think we had kept going to the Mountain View Reverse Engineering meetup, and we had this interest in it, and we kept bumping into each other at different meetups, and we had talked about just reverse engineering in general and our curiosity and how it overlaps with the type of work that we do, which is primarily embedded and firmware engineering. So I was like, look, we need to start. I felt like we needed a podcast for this, and there wasn't one. I pretty much hit it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on and off for a couple of years, and we didn't, do anything about it. And eventually, we're like, okay, let's just do it. And one of the original inspirations, which I don't know if it was our first guest, no, our second guest was Scanlime, Mike Elizabeth Scott.
Yeah.
And she'd done a great reverse engineering, a couple of videos on a Blu-ray drive.
That's right. Yes.
And going through each step of the process, dumping the firmware, doing this, doing that, and trying to convert a Blu-ray drive into like an etching, a laser etcher, something like that. But it was a really neat project, and it was kind of an inspiration to just take stuff apart. I mean, I've always been interested in taking stuff apart, but that specifically was one of the things that I remember.
Yeah, I just felt like at that particular time there was just a I just had a particular hunger at, because you're right, we did talk about it a couple different times, and I think I just got to be in my bonnet one summer. I'm like, we're doing it. Sunnyvale, weren't we at one of the cafes
Oh,
over
or like a
there?
Starbucks or something,
Or
probably.
Borders. Yeah, whenever
Yeah.
was still there. Yeah. I think that's where we met up and like made that plan.
So you guys started off
Yeah,
there,
sounds
like
right.
the Mountain View reverse engineering group. And so did you meet Micah of the Blu-ray episode there, or did you run into her later?
No.
No, I met her at Elle's house because I was coming over. Like, I guess she had just recorded with Elle that one day, and Elle and I were gonna go do something.
Either
Yeah,
the Hackaday ones or like there's
the
so
Tindy
back
or the SF hardware, but like,
yeah back when Chris Gamble was working at Supply Frame, he did every
Happy
month or few months he would
hardware.
do a hardware developer didactic galactic something like that.
Or was it HHH? Or was it?
No, that's before Hardware Happy Hour. This is well before that at the Supply
Oh.
Frame office in San Francisco.
Oh,
they
yeah.
would do
Yep.
kind of meetups and talks and stuff like that.
Yeah. I will say that the Bay Area is definitely different than I would say most of the other areas that I've been to, because finding meetups that approach the number of them and the like intense technical depth and meeting cool and interesting people, like it's hard when you're kind of away from those big tech hubs.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I definitely have run into some decent ones in like the DC area, but they tend to be,
Yeah.
I don't think that they're probably as consolidated, and the content probably isn't as
InfoSec.
nearly, yep, 100% InfoSec.
Yeah.
And they're probably not nearly as, to the same level of technical depth and with the same kind of players with the expertise and experiences that they have out there. Constantly have pipe hitters rolling through. I'm sure the Mountain View reverse engineering meet up all the time, as you guys have attested to on your show.
Yeah.
It's great because it varies from kind of simple projects to extremely in depth to people dropping O days like just for fun. That hasn't happened in a long time, but you know, well,
But you wouldn't know. Okay, so I guess here's the key. Here's one of the key deltas that I've seen. All of those, like at Mountain View, it's all off the record. There is no recording.
Yeah, I think that sounds similar to the original intent at DEF CON of having the unrecorded talks like kind of upstairs. And I think that it's moved away. The Sky Talks. I think it's moved away from that, to be honest with you, a little bit. But it sounds like the Mountain View Reverse Engineering Club has a similar intent to what those original Sky Talks were really about. Is that accurate?
That's and some speakers, you know, people can ask, "Hey, are photos okay?" And if the speaker's like, "Yeah, that's fine," then it's totally fine, right? So there's some great talks that are not very security sensitive, and people are like, "Yeah, please go ahead." But definitely the default is no. Which is how DEF CON used to be. But I feel like with DEF CON, even with Sky Talks, it's so hard these days to prevent photos and videos that it just would be a nightmare. Because I remember, DEF CON, my first was 14 back in 2006. And, you know, people took out a camera. It was a big deal. But now with smartphones and everything, it's not realistic. And then just the volumes, right? Like you have 30,000 people.
It's crazy. It's gotten so big. I kind of hate it. I used to really enjoy going.
I have to say it was overwhelming. Yeah, this past year was my first one, and I have to say it was very overwhelming. You really have to very carefully schedule yourself.
So much so.
And
or
there's
just
so
wing
many
it.
people there.
Yep.
So yeah. Yeah, I know, Alvaro. You totally wing it.
It's also kind of crazy how it's getting like it seems, at least doing goon stuff there for 1 year, that things are getting a little hard to control, right? Like the people are not like I guess as calm or anything like that. Like they just kind of freak out, right? So they were having a whole lot of kind of just people piling up in places and trying to just do stuff that they weren't supposed to do, which you're going to get at a hacking convention, of course.
Yeah.
Not usually in the same kind of numbers. I went to DEF CON 23 once with Aaron, and it wasn't nearly as like that as it was this year too. It was just kind of crazy. It was like, come on, like.
And 23 was still fairly big.
Some level, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Is it a mindset? Like, do you feel like there's a cultural mind shift? Is it kind of post pandemic, people having gone back to understanding how to be in public again, or is it something else?
I think it's kind of like a rule of like group sizes. You know what I mean? Like you're getting into like once the school of fish starts moving a particular way, and I think at a particular size, that just happens. It's easier to be anonymous in bigger crowds too, or just to kind of, Homer Simpson away into the bushes in the crowd. So I feel like people try to get away with more.
Yeah.
I agree.
But yeah, popping the stack back a little bit to the conversation about your guys' podcast genesis and everything like that. So you guys met up. Jen twisted Alvaro's arm and said, "Let's go." And now these years later, here we are.
He's very flexible. He's very flexible.
No handcuffs though involved, right? I was just
No.
I was just listening to that episode with Jerry Ellsworth, as a matter of fact, which I think is a good kind of segue into a conversation about some episodes that I really enjoyed. I think that one was "You Can Lose in So Many Colors." And she dropped some really interesting hacky things that she did with FPGAs, like using the GPIO along with resistors for a BinViz. And have you guys, so I guess the question I'm getting at is, have you guys picked up hacky things in your own personal hacky time, or that have helped you out at work from guests on the show?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yes.
I mean,
You have a story, Alvaro?
I definitely have used reverse engineering techniques, if you will, in my day job. It's not reverse engineering jobs that I've had before, but sometimes it's easier to reverse engineer a file format than to try to get the documentation or even get in touch with the manufacturer. I know for Tube Time with Eric, he does a lot of great PCB reverse engineering.
Yes.
And I've done that many times when I'm trying to reproduce a device or just figure out how something works. And I've done that many, many times. Take off the components, scan it, use KiCad, figure out the schematic, figure out the components, and start, make a derivative of it.
I would say Eric, I definitely can tell you I've utilized some of Eric's work. I have one of those little light tracer boards where you're supposed to use it to trace artwork, but I use it to light up the PCB so I can see more of the layers, which was a technique that he was in one of his workshops for Hackaday. He discussed this, and he's talked about it with us. So I've definitely used that. I think when Ghidra was newer, talking with different people, that was also really helpful in terms of getting over the hump of avoiding. I think the problem that I've mostly experienced, I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. When we bring people on, it is not so they can hype their thing. We've tried to focus on not being commercialized, but that doesn't prevent me from ending up procuring those products. And then the problem that I have, and I think Alvaro is better about this than I am, I acquire them with the intent of doing the thing with them and learning the skill. And they just kind of sit there because I'm so busy on other things. And so right now I'm trying to clear my stack of those so I can actually go, okay, now I can utilize this new skill that I have with these tools that I've procured. One of my pet peeves, in the synthesizer community, analog synthesizers, there's a bunch of people, they just buy all the equipment, but they don't know actually how to use that. And I desperately try not to be that person, but right now I feel like I'm that person.
Oh, totally right there with you. I know Dell's same way, aren't you, Dell?
Yeah. I have a whole shelf behind me of just stuff that I've bought. I was like, oh, I'll use this for that thing, and I did not use that thing.
But if you do a meeting, let's just say if you were doing an interview, I've done interviews talking with clients or what have you, and sometimes they'll recognize some of that stuff, or they'll ask me, oh, well, do you have this? And I'm like, here, and I just pick it up and I go here and show it on the screen.
Nice.
I mean, does that make me a legitimate just point blank, I think this is where having the thing, being able to show the thing lends a certain amount of credibility, but let's be honest, it's BS.
Street cred. Got the street cred.
Yeah, it's street cred because you bought it, not because you are actually down with it, as it were.
I do have a couple others, Stack Smashing is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, Thomas Roth. He's been on a couple times,
Thomas
right?
Roth. Yeah, he's been on a couple times. And even before the first time, we talked to him, and he was doing glitching with a Raspberry Pi Pico with an RP2040. And I was able to use that for one of my projects to glitch an STM8, which was really, really fun. And then another good one, I don't know if y'all do much PCB or reverse engineering, but when you're trying to figure out which pin is connected to what, you take out your multimeter and then you set it to beep, when it's connected, and you put one pin wherever your source is, and then you start probing around the board to figure out where that goes. And that can be extremely time consuming. So another tip from Tube Time from Eric, he got like a brush of super thin copper wire that I don't know if he got one or he made it, and then he connects that conductive brush, if you will, to one end of the multimeter, and then he just brushes all those bristles along the circuit board until it beeps, and narrow down which area to start looking for. And that's really, really helpful. That's when you're
that's brilliant.
Trying to figure out a schematic.
Like a core search and then a find search.
Exactly.
Pulling on that thread a little bit, though, for tools from some of the people too, and PCBRE, we have definitely, in work scenarios had access at times to X-rays. And I know that you guys had a link up, I want to say with John McMaster in some of your earlier episodes too, of Silicon Prawn fame. I hear he has like a portable X-ray. Have you guys been able to utilize that? Or what I was really hoping for too is to see, do you guys happen to have any tips on how to procure an X-ray for the home gamer?
He's got connections more than anything, right? And he may or may not have something at this point in time, but one time in the meetup, he connected with one of these companies, and they literally brought a white panel van that was in the parking lot of the barbecue place we used to get do the meetup at. And we just went in the back of this van, and we were X-raying whatever we could bring to these folks.
Oh my God, it was so weird. Yeah, so we're just all out in the park. It was lightly raining, if you remember.
Yes.
It did not look suspicious at all. I think I have like a distant picture, so you can't see faces, but it's dark out, the white van, and then like Tasha.
Natashenka, Natalie Solanovich.
We did one of her.
Tamagotchi.
Thank you. I almost called it a Furby. That's completely wrong.
Different.
Yes,
Close
different.
enough.
Somebody did their phone. Somebody did. Was it your badge that you did? Was this?
I did my work badge. Yeah. Yeah, so we had a few Google badges, and we found different ones had different types of antenna on them, which is interesting.
Which means different frequencies, I would expect.
Yeah. Or additional ones.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
And then what else did we?
Did that guy's
people
phone
with their
still
phones.
work?
Sorry?
Did that guy's phone still work? Because if you're not careful with an X-ray,
that's what I thought.
Oh yeah.
So
somebody with their phone.
Yeah, someone definitely. I think they turned it off first, though. But is it really off? Nobody.
Yeah, and then
somebody knows.
You were asking about portable ones.
Yeah, the NSA knows. They're just not telling you.
Yeah.
Well, I think with the new Find My Device announcement, I think we know it's still on. Anyway.
But I think John at some point had dental X-ray, and I think those are, or at least they're receivers, and those are pretty small. You still need an X-ray source, and I'm sure he has more than one. But that was, he had like, it was a USB to basically dental X-ray receiver.
Yes, and it's not and it was kind of like you have like the one plate, and I think if you just put the plate in on the, the one that
you need to transmit X-rays basically, and then that thing is like your CCD.
Need thing on your face. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is then he has, is it now 2, maybe more? I think he might be restoring another, because it seems like if you're into this, you're restoring. It's not the same thing as an X-ray, but it is working on an atomic level, your SEM microscopes. If you're into that. So like, and I think I think if you end up on the Silicon Prawn Discord, that often comes up. That's how I got like some microscopes and other stuff from him. He does ship.
Oh.
But you have to know.
If you're in the right community, there's a lot of surplus hardware flying around.
Yeah.
I think at one point I had come across, my OSINT skills are decent. So coming across some old Soviet equipment that made its way over to the States, those come in like batches. I think they come from like old Soviet bloc countries, but they go pretty quick.
That one time there was that X-ray thing that happened. I would say also John's house, like you just don't go in the garage willy-nilly. wait for him to invite you, because there might be acids or other things that are going on, and your nose or your face might melt off. There you go.
It's like my kind of place.
Oh, I'm
That's a
sure
fun place.
dissolving some of those outside casements for the chips and stuff like that, you're getting some pretty nasty chemicals.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And like you could, I kind of know now what to do there, but like I would just ventilation to do that thing. So I just have those samples processed, and then they come to me, and then now they're prepped and ready for me to put into an SEM.
So mostly in your guys' day jobs, you spend more time doing like firmware development. So are you guys at all in like the FPGA ASIC design? You know what I mean? Where you have that kind of organization where...
No,
I think like a long time ago, maybe, but no.
Yeah, I've done firmware and I do hardware. So I mean, I'll do circuit boards and firmware and some software. At some jobs, I have worked with ASICs, but I was interfacing with a custom ASIC. I was not developing it.
Okay.
I've done I've had products that had FPGAs on it that were like you could attach to like a single board computer. So like just needed to make sure that you design something simple to confirm the functionality with our main products, and then other products where I've had to interface with some ASIC that we've created, that the hardware engineer created, and I need to like make it work with a driver or something like that. So pretty simple, but like I'm either doing firmware / embedded, or I'm at the opposite end of the stack, I guess, from Alvaro. I went to management.
Ah, okay.
But I think like Alvaro did that for a hot sec too, and I'm like, I think we're both in agreement. Like,
Well, so my last job was at a startup doing ocean science, and I was the principal firmware engineer, aka the only firmware engineer. And then as the team grew, they're like, "Oh, you're gonna manage people now." So at some point, I had 3 employees, and I was still writing a bunch of code, but yeah, now I don't have any reports, and it's great. My team was awesome. I'd rather write code all day than have to worry about other people's career goals and schedule and all that stuff.
You were doing such a nice thing. Yes, you were doing like I would be managing managers who had other engineers, and then I would have to be like, this is where we're going in the future, and working with directors. So like, and trying
you're high level.
And then occasionally I would write some code.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I kind of, so part of the move was due to me following kind of a similar villain or hero arc, depending on which way you look at it. And I have come to the conclusion, I think I'm going to go back to the lab and do some of the nug work a little bit more. Dell made the right move.
Yeah.
He zigged and I zagged.
Well, you know what? Go ahead, Dell, please.
Oh, I was going to say, I did the same thing. I spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 years doing some managerial type of stuff. And every day I was like, I have to stop this immediately. And then as soon as I saw the opportunity to just go back to lab work, right, like hands-on, whatever it is, I jumped.
Yeah, I think. Okay, I'm gonna ask this question. Please be honest. I'm gonna guess which way, and this will lead me to my bigger statement. When we talk about Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak, which person do you feel like you're more of a fan of?
I think I have a foot in both camps, but if I would say probably 60-40 Wozniak to Jobs. And the reason that I say that is because the spirit of the Woz and the things that he did actually doing the nug work and like figuring out the hardware was awesome. That said, like to turn what they eventually came into, I don't think it's any secret to anybody that's where kind of like Jobs came in. And if you see some of those old clips of him out there on the interwebs where he talks about how silly it can be sometimes to hire a bunch of MBAs into a thing and how you should flatten organizations and things like that, I can agree with a lot of those philosophies. That said, I never worked with the guy. I've heard he was also a terrible monster. So I imagine some sort of psychopathy has to be involved in there too, to be able to rise to any decent, level like that in an organization. So that's my answer. What about yours, Del?
I'm Woz all the way. I don't want any part of marketing or management or anything like that.
I mean, I guess it's a necessary evil, right? But
yeah, right. Like I understand those people are necessary and companies have to have stuff like that. I am just happiest when somebody else is doing it.
Yeah,
I,
agreed.
yeah, I think I really love Waz. Like, just his spirit. I get the jobs thing. You kind of need a marketer to like kind of make what you do visible to others. And I also think that like as engineers, we're really awful product designers, but it's that Waz ethos that I think that most engineers are really kind of into. We just need to find the right jobs to make us shine or put the shine on us so we're not kind of pointlessly toiling away and burning out.
I will say, yeah.
Anyway,
And the difference
I think the point.
I was
Go
going to say
ahead.
the difference I think between that burnout and not is probably the people who do have the care and concern and soft skills to be able to be a little bit of shield at some sort of intermediary management level. And I think that, I don't know if you guys have ever read Camille Fournier's book, The Manager's Path, but she drops a lot of good little nuggets in there. I think about a 30, 60, 90-day plan for when you get to a spot and following that adage, like seek first to understand and then to be understood. And just really simple things about how like a powerful teammate can sometimes be more powerful than a powerful player, because if you're raising all boats, then everybody's going to be happy. And for the people who want to be kind of left alone and do mostly a lot of the nug work and stuff like that, it's really valuable to have one of those people around. But to follow Dell's point, I don't necessarily always want to be that guy. It's draining.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the mentoring aspect of it I really enjoyed, because it also forces you to become even better technically when you have to explain to other people. But the other aspects of it, I was not as big a fan of.
Yeah, I think I would generally agree with you. The mentoring sometimes a lot of it sometimes, like, I have no doubts in most people's technical abilities you can figure out, but like what I'm finding pretty consistently is the communication aspect. Being able to communicate in just plain language to people who are not technical what you're trying to do, what your plan is to achieve that, is probably the biggest gulf that I see in most engineers who are going from that kind of mid-level senior to beyond. That is the biggest gulf and differentiator that I see. And so spending a lot of time, even for first level managers, trying to get them to figure out that particular portion, and then how to understand that you need to not just communicate downward and across with your team, but you need to start having a network within your organization.
Oh, for sure.
To discuss things with other people, you need to be able to communicate and have regular one-on-ones with your other cross-functional colleagues. And I think that's the other thing that they're not comfortable with. And so it's hard for example, because I tried to delegate those, but if it falls back, I have to get back and involved in that. And what I noticed is, like, if I'm spending all my time on those things, it makes it really hard for me to help figure out how to steer the ship going into this other direction. So yes.
Those are great insights.
Engineering.
Yeah. No, 100% agree.
I don't know if that's what you had on your bingo card.
No, I'm glad that it went there, because I think that's important to talk about too, especially in any place where you're in a group. Like, how pro-social are you? Because you can definitely be an introverted person, but if you're still pro-social, in other words, you are doing things with, say, like, hey, I am part of this team and I am interested in communicating, versus like some of the alpha geeks that sometimes rear their heads at places who want to be the smartest in the room and will bully and edge others out, which I would argue is definitely not pro-social. I think it's okay for somebody to continue to do like just the normal engineering related work. But the difference between what makes the dynamic work and not is, I guess, in general, how pro-social people are and how long you let it go without the person being a jerk or a bully to other people. And I don't know, it's tough, because motivation is tough too. And we all ride those sine waves in life, right? Of like feeling like this is the best decision I ever made. I'm loving this. And like in the trough where we're like, okay, I'm ready to leave tomorrow.
Yeah. Or why did I choose this? Yeah. And I think that acknowledging that everyone goes through that cycle, even on like kind of their own one big decision. Silicon Valley culture is wildly different than like what I've seen in the rest of the country now. And I'm trying to figure that out. It's been very interesting. Like the culture of companies, the culture of geographical areas is very different.
100%.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like I don't think Silicon Valley culture to the nose to the grindstone type of thing. Like you're not serious unless you're like practicing 24/7. And then like also I feel like inevitably it feels like so much of Silicon Valley most people are neurodivergent, stated or unstated. But
It really depends on the company and team, though. I've worked here in Silicon Valley in pretty great work-life balance positions, and some that are the way you say, and it just luck of the draw, I guess, and also company culture.
I think the company culture matters a lot in that regard. I think the problem is like I've worked for too many startups, and then
I
too
have
many
heard that
big
specifically,
companies.
that startups kind of expect people to just work themselves to death for them pretty regularly.
Some big companies do too.
Yeah, I would say God, what is the acronym? Is it?
No, I would disagree with that. I like when I was at Apple, the team I was in was pretty great about work-life balance. I was not working on a like iPhone, right? I was not working on the product consumer. We were doing prototyping and internal tools, that kind of stuff. But that team, we were all pretty good about the work-life balance. So it's just depends. But I know people that work there and burn out and, not very long time. So really.
So I think you're right. If you're doing R&D, if you're doing internal tools, if you're not working on a product with a public launch schedule and expectation, so consumer electronics, if you're not working on that, then I think you're probably going to have a slightly chiller life. Yeah, just more chill compared to, oh my God, It wasn't always like that. Like, I distinctly remember in the 90s and early aughts, it was like, yes, there were a lot of startups and it was a big booming time. So people kind of get onto that like startup mentality that we kind of see today. But prior to that, you would just have nerds and general weirdos, doing their day job, but then they would go do their kind of art thing. And no one can afford to do that anymore. All those arts got pushed out.
I think that I've seen some good stuff along that. I think about like the third space, like in the shrink of, you had work and you had home, and then the third space would be either the social community or group in your town or whatever.
The coffee shop.
Or church.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are too worked to the bone. And a lot of places, there's just no expectation of like, if you're there, you're probably paying. Though, to be fair, there are the meetup groups and stuff like that. And going to those, I've always found have spawned some really cool side quests. Dell and I have a tendency to go on a lot of them. And we had talked about that, I think, in the end of the year wrap up a little bit. I can't just speak to how many times one of those random side quests paid off for me, either at work or to unlock some new aspect of either like fixing something in my home or fixing something in my car or something like. And so I think that, I don't know. I feel like I have an infinite capacity for side quests. I know in actuality I don't, but I seldom regret having done them, because it will usually unlock some sort of new interesting thread to pull down or some other interesting person to meet. I know that you both have a lot of different, side quests and things like that too. Would you like to speak to those a little bit?
I'm going to let Alvaro speak. Oh. No, I'm going to let Alvaro speak. I talk all the time, and clearly I should not. My voice is dying.
Side quests, I think most of my jobs that I've gotten are because of my side quests or side projects, to be honest. All of my things that I do on the side, I use to build up skills that I'm not getting at work, or to learn different things. And then next time someone reaches out, they look at those projects and those skills, and they're like, oh, we can use that.
I'm kind of in a similar boat. Like a lot of the stuff that I work on at home has kind of bled over into work and has definitely landed me job before. But at the same time, I'm just busy when I get home. Unfortunately, I don't get as much chance for side quests these days.
For me, the past 4 years, my arms, I have a lot of ulnar nerve issues now. So if I'm on the computer for too long, my fingers start going numb and all that stuff. So a lot of my side quests has been limited, not due to free time, but just physical capacity. I've been avoiding surgery and just doing physical therapy, that kind of stuff. But I sometimes it's frustrating because it's like I have all these things I want to do, but I'm like, nope, I need to take a break from the computer, otherwise it's going to hurt.
I just had carpal tunnel surgery, and I also have cubital tunnel in both of my elbows. So
cubital, that's what I got.
So pivoting a little bit back on the kind of like hacky reverse engineering front. But yeah, so we were talking a little bit earlier. We talked about John McMaster, X-rays, some of your guys' firmware 4 development and things like that. Do you mind if I just ask you guys some rapid fire questions and we can see where we can get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So question numero uno.
I did not Coke expire.
Okay, first question. Favorite architecture or system you've worked on?
I'm just going to go with Cortex M, just because I'm the most familiar with it. I just started playing with some RISC-V stuff, but I would say Cortex M, like ARM V7 M, if I must say.
Who's going to answer not ARM at this point in time?
Give me 5 years and we'll probably won't be so ARM heavy anymore.
You think it'll go RISC-V? Okay, I worked for MIPS. That was the first architecture I learned. That's how I learned to design computers. But honestly, a lot of the MIPS people, they all work for ARM now.
Is that right?
So I'm going to go with ARM because at this point, like, what am I going to talk about? Super H? Nobody talks about Super H.
There are some really niche ones out there. I think more and more you see systems on a chip using like bespoke solutions for things. And, Dell and I have talked about doing some RE with both STM32 as well as ESP32. And so, Extensa and some of the other things where if you're going to have to write a processor module for it in Ghidra, then, I didn't know if you guys had run across anything kind of really esoteric or bizarre. There was somebody who had hit me up in a message not too long ago to talk about what was it? Dell, I don't know if I mentioned that to you or not. It was some really bizarre Chinese chip, started with a G. Anyway, have you guys run into anything like that?
I haven't personally.
Architecture?
I mean, other than like Hackasat and kind of challenges like that where they would throw some weird stuff at us. Personally, I haven't had to. I mean, I've worked on, back when I was a TI, I worked on the C2000 processor, and that's its own instruction set. Its own processor.
I was going to say that, I struggle to think of a reason specifically now to use a DSP for most things. Like, can you think of anything, Alvaro? Like, going back to the CTI series, which presumably is going to put us back in.
I mean, C2000, they're still releasing stuff, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this used to be just instructions specific to the application. Like this C2000 specifically had instructions to do loops without overhead, right? So you could say, have an instruction that says, do the next n instructions m times.
Yep.
And then you didn't have to be doing that compare, decrement and stuff. And that for 99% of people doesn't matter. But if you're doing a tight control loop, it's important. They also had hardware trigonometric functions. So you had single cycle, sine, cosine, tangent, like that kind of stuff. And it mostly used for power, like high power stuff, switching converters, motor control. But now with a decent STM32, you can do that in software, and they're fast enough that you don't need these specialized tools as much anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's some of those co-processors and things like that. Like we had talked about the like with RP 2040, like being able to have something that's like a bolt-on state machine, which doesn't use the clock cycles of the primary MCU.
Yeah, the PIOs.
Yeah.
So the C2000 also had those little. They had, it was pretty similar to the PIO, not connected to the IO pins necessarily, but they had a few different processors that were just for doing math stuff, and they had their own little assembly language, and they were independent of the main processor. So you could have these co-processors just churn numbers and get back at you, and you could do custom algorithms, right, as opposed to having task-specific co-processor.
Yeah, it seems similar in like sensor fusion.
There's of course the sensor fusion. That's usually when the only other time I think that I've ever had somebody go like, okay, now we're going to use a DSP for that coprocessor. But I guess like overwhelmingly, I still struggle. I'm going to say the very naive question, knowing that there's obviously very specialized high performance stuff that need that. But like since I mostly work on consumer, I like. At this point, like so much of everything is kind of like consumed by the ARM architecture and the consolidation of everything into the ARM architecture.
Sure.
And at this point, who is at this, for us to have to discuss these types of things, you'd have to be working in assembly, or you'd have to be working on such a specialized target, and you need to have your compiler, or you need to know the intrinsics to enable and access that level of performance, or it's just happening behind the scenes naturally for you. Like, it's just kind of not something that's top of mind anymore the way it was in the 90s.
It used to be anything with a screen or doing audio, right? Like your kind of audio processing hardware or that kind of thing. I mean, I don't think this is the same, but I know for networking hardware, they'll also have application specific stuff, but I wouldn't call it a DSP. But yeah, I think audio, or like I know TI had their, I don't know if it was C5000 or C6000 line of processors, and it was for infotainment for cars. And that has special stuff. You might have graphics hardware, but now you can get an ARM core with a graphics core as well, and it's all quote unquote standardized around ARM.
Yeah, I think it has to be the C6000, because I don't remember the 5000s I was using when I was doing voice over IP stuff.
They shut them down in 2012. When I was still there, they did big layoffs.
At TI?
Yeah, it was so.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right. When they got out of Android, and then like we picked up all those Android people into the Amazon to work on the Fire phone, which, as you know, big success.
Huge. Not as bad as the Ken.
Some of those people that we hired are still there at Amazon. I've been shocked.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jen. I think there was a guy whose class I took out at Black Hat years ago. Name was Salmil Shah, I believe. And his joke that he would tell at the beginning of every class is, maybe there's an x86 on every desk, but there's an ARM in every pocket. And that's so true. Like, man, ARM over the course of the last... And
in every car.
Yeah, everywhere. You're right.
I mean, it took out like in 2012-ish, ARM took out both, made the move to take out both MIPS and Super H out of set-top box.
I wasn't tracking that.
Like those are, when I was working at ST, and they had a set-top box department or business unit, that's what we were. We work on Super H. Occasionally, we'd have a MIPS processor. Like the Sigma Systems was there people that were really making set-top box OEM to enable your TiVos and whatever else that was out there. But because there was such a move by ARM into Android, and then Android to be the basis of any of the in-home streaming boxes, that basically wiped out everything.
But it was iPhone started using ARM, and that was kind of
that was goes all the way back to the iPod, doesn't it?
I don't remember, maybe, but yeah, there at some point Intel was going to provide iPhone chips, and they screwed up. Basically,
I believe that.
So, question number 2 of our rapid fire questions, which were not so rapid fire.
We're not very rapid, are we?
No, I'm totally cool with it too.
You're giving me the anxiety every time you say rapid fire, but then I'm like, we just did 10 minutes.
Go for it.
So, question number 2, I'll stop calling it rapid fire. What's the most unexpected thing you have seen reverse engineered or reverse engineered yourself?
I mean, myself, one of the fun ones recently, it's a touchscreen clicker. So it's a device that simulates a touchscreen touch. So like tapping your finger on a screen, but it simulates it electrically. And I had to figure out how those worked. And I still don't quite understand how it works. Like, I know how it works, but not really. But I got the full schematic.
What do you mean? What do you mean it simulates it happening? Like, it's just
imagine you're a TikTok influencer, right? I don't know. And you have an array of phones that you want to like your video, but you have to be tapping the screen to like 1,000 times.
Okay, so I've outsourced this to a click farm. Okay.
Yeah. So then you put this device on top of your phone, and then it gets a 3.3 volt or 5 volt signal, and every time that signal goes high, it simulates a click, but there's no moving parts. It's all done magically.
It doesn't matter where the click is on the screen.
It'll happen under the device. Yeah.
Now, does it only work on capacitive touchscreens, or will it work on resistive touchscreens? Okay.
No, it won't work on resistive. It's capacitive, but yeah, it's this weird. It has these amplifier, or not amplifier, but like transistors, and it's basically, if I understand correctly, the phone screen is doing a scan constantly, sending a little pulse, and it can actually receive this pulse and then basically changes capacitance, right?
Yeah.
And it's a fairly simple circuit. It has just a few transistors, but understanding how the hell that worked, and then like the pad shapes are weird. And anyway, that was pretty unexpected and weird.
What
I
about you,
have a
Jen?
design company. We would reverse engineer. Like we would just take things apart and reverse engineer so we understand like the BOM costs and like the trade-offs and everything. Remember when in early 2010s when those butterflies in a jar were a thing?
Yeah.
That's just using a simple, like, it's just really cheap microphone to get sound, really simple filter, and that's what would cause it to change the motor so it would jump around based on sound, like if you tapped on the lid. I don't know.
No,
I don't
it's
know how to
interesting.
answer your question. But Alvaro, I want to get back to you. Okay, why were you looking at this?
Yeah,
Are
why did
you?
you have this?
Yeah, that's why I was like,
How did you come along with
There's
this?
so many questions.
it's like Alvaro,
You have a secret TikTok we don't know about?
yeah, that's what I want to know. Like,
No, this is a work related thing, but the gist of it is to measure latency. So if you want to automate measuring the speed, the reaction time of a phone to an event, this is one way to do it.
okay,
That's clever.
Yeah, it reminds me of some of the crazy test setups like tech channels will do with like the amount of delay between a mouse click and like the thing actually changing on the screen.
Yep. Are you measuring it also at the source of the pulse that you're sending, and then when it registers on the far end?
So that's what you could do, right? You can send your signal and you can characterize that, and that's hopefully more repeatable than having a fake finger coming down, that's the alternative, right? You have a fleshy like analog that on a linear motor.
Weird robot.
Exactly.
Question number
Is it
3.
a one-finger robot? Doesn't sound like it has no finger. Okay, rapid fire. Let's go.
So supposing you had a magic wand and with it you could get anybody on your show, who are you having on your show?
Oh, we have a list of those. We talked about our last our last episode we did. We had like Azeria, from
of course. ARM
Reverse Engineering.
Yep.
Hector Martin, he does the Asahi Linux, which is one of the coolest reverse engineering projects there is right now, I think.
I think we wanted Joe Grant. Yeah, we wanted Joe Grant back. Oh,
I mean, Joe we've had.
We have, but
he's
I
awesome.
think we haven't done like an in-depth. Yes, that he was on there.
We had Malware Unicorn, Maddie Stone.
What else? We put the list in our show notes last time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it's but yeah, I think the Asahi Linux project. I don't know if you've all followed along, but they're basically reverse engineering Apple's processors.
Oh,
and
no, wasn't tracking that at all.
Linux to it.
Yes.
If you just go to Asahi Linux.
Did you install already? You installed already, right?
I haven't put it on mine, but you can run it on Apple Silicon Macs. Basically, you can run. I don't know if it's Fedora now. Yeah, it's Fedora. They're doing reverse engineering of the project, but they're contributing to upstream Linux to that support. So if you in the past year or two, even Linus Torvalds is now using Linux on his Apple Silicon Mac. Yep. Because of the Asahi Linux project.
Yep.
That's awesome.
It's pretty badass.
Alvaro, do you now have an M3? Yeah. Do any of you guys have an?
I have an M1.
Series? Okay. I just got an M3 MacBook Air, and you reminded me now I have some opportunities to investigate.
Yeah.
No, my setup's pretty basic. I got the computer I'm on now is just like a regular Ryzen 5 that I play games and do homework and stuff on, and then the laptop I use is just whatever the last laptop my wife retired and switched to.
Oh, she was so kind to bequeath you with that.
Well, so this one broke so bad it wouldn't charge anymore, and I had to replace one of the USB ports or the Thunderbolt.
Oh yeah.
Charge now. The kids knock it off tables and stuff.
My partner's old laptop wouldn't turn on anymore, and it was just a battery replacement project.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, those are. I feel like people don't fix enough stuff anymore.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, and we talk about it sometimes, but there's such a huge overlap between the repair community and reverse engineering community, because most of the time you don't have a manual to work with, and so a lot of these folks that are repairing either really old electronics or new. I mean, on the new side, you have like the Louis Rossmans of the world, and then you have a huge community of retro computing enthusiasts that are fixing old things, and that's why I keep mentioning Tube Time. He does a lot of reverse engineering of old graphics cards and other things like that, just to bring them back to life. He says he does it out of spite, because sometimes people will list them on eBay for exorbitant prices, and just out of anger, he'll go reverse engineer it and put the design files online for free, and then someone in China will start manufacturing it really cheap and drive the prices down.
Did that happen with he did the Sound Blaster, didn't he?
Yeah, he did the Sound Blaster. He's done at least one Sound Blaster and many others. Yeah, but he'll put silkscreen on the board, like designed in spite, or out of spite, designed in anger. He said, yes.
Designed in anger, man.
And the thing is, like, Eric is not an angry guy. Yeah, Eric is not an angry guy.
No, he's hilarious, but he does a lot of jokes.
He sounds like a kindred spirit with Dell, though, for sure.
Yeah.
Now,
I feel like that's just a general firmware thing. Like there's a certain amount of like curmudgeonly, angry stuff that's going on inside of us.
And I don't know if it's like as bad nowadays as it was in like the Super Nintendo days, but God, it really feels like sometimes like hardware designers are doing their best to make it as big a pain in the ass to use their product as possible. Right? It's just like, oh yeah, it just won't do this thing that it clearly should have. You're like,
you know what? I think that okay. I think there's two things going on there. One is back in the 90s, we were not as things were more engineering driven as opposed to product driven, and so that level of refinement, what we thought was easy, is not easy for everybody else. So that's one thing.
That's fair.
And then it's a reflection of that engineer's personality. And then today, I feel like when it's hard to use, it's because the product managers have there is something intentional there that they're trying that they're profiting from, or enables them for some other facet of some product feature, not for ease of use or usability. There's something else that's going to they're funneling you towards some new thing somehow.
Do you mean like something similar to like a dark UX design type situation, or what do you mean by that?
Probably really simplistically, I would say, kind of how we for some IoT products like the Peloton or whatever, like some of these products stop working if you don't have the subscription.
Right.
Well, now the Bamboo 3D printers. I don't know if you've been following that.
Saw that.
Oh my God.
Oh, I heard that.
Well, the thing is that like it was such a big deal. Like I just remember we were there was a talk, and specifically some guy was like, "Hey, this Bamboo thing is like needs some hacking. It's kind of open. We can make it better." And so we all these reverse engineers have been pulled in, bought the Bamboo, have enjoyed it, have been trying to make it better, and then they turn around and do this.
Yeah.
So they already posted the code to dump the private key, so you can authenticate to your own projects. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Well, it's not because of Bamboo. But
I'm annoyed with them. Like we shouldn't have had to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we should have done this. Like when I buy some hardware, it should be mine, right? Like.
Well, I would have to say the Cricut. There's a whole series of like craft cutters that are also kind of like in the sphere of dubious subscription things. But
is Cricut doing subscriptions now too?
Yeah.
They've always had subscriptions. You're not required to have it to use the thing. It just enables you to get a lot of stuff done. But their hardware has some mechanical flaws, and so like I had to replace some rollers. Otherwise, it basically makes the product unusable. And right now, I'm like talking Elle through replacing those rollers also on hers.
When it comes down to how you guys go after either, personal projects or other things like that, what are like some of the favorite tools that you're using? I know that I've heard you both mention a couple, but just off the top, what comes to mind when we talk favorite tools?
Alvaro loves Jupyter notebooks.
What?
You love Jupyter. You've mentioned it several times.
Have I? I just learned how to use them.
Like,
As
I'd be
a thoughtful
surprised.
part, you didn't just learn how to use them. If you go back into the podcast, you mentioned them a couple times. I was just like, as my podcast husband, I listen to you.
I don't know. Maybe I forgot how to use them because I just rediscovered them the other day. But tool-wise, I always say my Salier logic analyzer is
Oh yeah.
by far my most used tool. And these days now I also love my it's these magnetic things and
Oh yeah, with the mini thing on the table, and
It's like a helping hands.
let me see what
Magnetic.
kind of.
they're let me take a look.
Are they the kind that screw down?
You get like a metal plate, and they're magnetic, and then they can like.
Yeah.
It's called PC Byte. They
Yeah,
are
that sounds
so
about right.
awesome.
Yeah, I think we've used those, haven't we?
I
We have
used
those.
them a little bit.
PCBITE? PC Byte?
Yeah.
We're in
So
line
the
on
PC Bytes are great by SensePeak. And then there's also, if you haven't seen the OmniFixio,
What's
it's another really great board holder, like helping hands, but also magnetic.
Okay.
That's OmniFixo.
Oh,
It's really, really handy.
okay, I see it. Yep.
Cool.
Is it
That-
more cheaper than the other one?
No, it's like $64, I think, but the amount of use I get out of these is
Mhm.
just pays for itself. Same with the
Yeah.
PC Byte. Whenever you're trying to get signals on a board, you just plop it on there and then you don't have to solder little tiny wires. You can probe fine points or pins without needing any actual work on the board, which is super, super handy for reverse engineering, or just I put tons of test points on my own circuit boards. That way I can just put it on there and measure, look at my SPI bus or I2C or power without needing to solder anything.
Yeah, this one is a 3D printed one
okay.
that there's like an Italian police officer, like a forensics investigator had shared. He's not out there on the open web anymore. He did have a site where you could either buy it himself, and he had it out there on Thingiverse. But that one definitely is great for being able to do a lot of that probe work, because as you can see there, the articulated arms allow you to move it and fixate it in any kind of position. And then for the longer arms and stuff like that, you can get really tight in there with some
I'm assuming you're put these in the show notes, but just for the people listening, if they don't have the show notes handy, it looks like it's interesting to me. It looks like the frame. There's a black frame that kind of looks like an outline of a basketball, and then affixed to it are two types of orange attachments. One looks like an orange crane holding a needle, and another one looks like an octo arm, kind of similar to those
Doc Ock.
Also orange.
Doc.
Doc Ock, exactly.
Can't see that now.
Or if you're really into those old when people used to have the tripods that used to be able to wrap around to hold onto a bar or something like that, they kind of like the same type of plasticky
like the camera grippers, the ones
articulation. Yeah. That's what it kind of looks like to me, is cranes and octo arms on a basketball.
Other tools that I'd be sad if I didn't mention, but the new Bus Pirate.
Have you been using that enough? Because I
haven't used a new one, but I'm about to get some add-ons for work. But I know you've all mentioned Bus Pirate and then the Bus Blaster from the past, and that's one that's kind of always been there when I need to dump an EEPROM or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
I've got an older one, but I want one of those new ones.
I have the new one. The Salier for me is just so embedded in my way of thinking that
So for reading, yes, but whenever you need to produce a signal, that's where the Salier lacks that feature. So for providing stimulus to a device, if you need to talk to a sensor real quick or inject. A lot of these days you can do that also with a RP2040 and on MicroPython. So you could just very quickly do a few commands and get going. But just the user interface is a lot nicer.
So I need to do that. I would like to do that because I have been using the Pico to do as a function generator to do some automated test injection, and that's worked okay. But I'll be honest with you, Thonny, I'm not a fan.
Yeah,
And
the IDE.
Also,
Yeah,
Oh,
it's just not very as stable as yeah, I would
No.
say like I would like to help. I would like to assist with money to make it better.
I would gladly drop
We'll
some
get from you
dollars.
to make it better. Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
but what was the other one? Oh, so there's like I don't. So if you're still like popping off chips and dumping firmware as opposed to extracting it from the SoC, like I have, is it the 86
Yeah.
something?
866.
66.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I have that kit, and like I don't use it that often, but I feel like oftentimes it's just like when I need it, it's there. I don't have to like guess. I don't have to like,
Yep.
yeah, I don't need a whole lot of extra stuff. I just like
yeah,
unsolder.
having the right tool for the job makes a huge difference. Like
Yeah.
for USB, I still have my Beagle 480, which just works. I recently got the Luna, or no, well, it's not
Oh.
called Luna anymore. Grease
know
Cut Gadgets.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. The one that I talked with Strathon about.
Yeah, but what's it called now? Syntheon.
Yes, Syntheon.
So I have used that one. I just haven't had too many projects to need it yet. But the past decade, the Beagle 480, whenever I was either developing firmware or reverse engineering USB stuff, it was so useful. Like I used it for a project that I needed for a client where they needed some sort of device input into an iPad or an iPhone, but Bluetooth was too high latency. So I was able to, and you could use game controllers these days. So I was able to use a PlayStation PS4 controller directly connected to the iPad over USB-C. And then the iPad's just like, oh, great, game controller, you can access it. But this is back in the day with Lightning, before USB-C, if you wanted to have any sort of peripheral, you need to be Apple certified, made for iPhone, you need a special authentication chip, all that stuff. But they had exceptions for game controllers. So I cloned the USB profile of a PS4 controller, and then I had a Teensy microcontroller pretending to be a PS4 controller over USB, and then giving the phone sensor values as if it was a game controller, and then we were able to get it going.
That's pretty rad. Oh man. So I know we're coming up here on our hour time, so wanted to kind of pivot into some last thoughts here. What kind of advice or insights or guidance or resources would you recommend to somebody who's kind of new to the game and getting their feet wet?
My biggest one is patience. That's also the hardest one, but one of the one of the traits or attributes I look up to the most in great reverse engineers is just dedication. They just sit down and go at it, right? It's hard for us these days. We have that instant gratification kick that we're so used to getting stuff quickly. But with reverse engineering, just got to set your expectations that it might take a while. It's going to be worth it, but don't give up. And I would always say start with something small. Start with little projects that maybe for no good reason, but just like, hey, can I compile my own code and then try to reverse engineer it myself, knowing both ends of the thing first, just to learn. But a lot of these things that people want to reverse engineer, it just takes time. And it's just knowing that it's going to take a while. Setting expectations is important.
Amen.
I would add to that. I would add to it the curiosity. I think the curiosity is what drives that intention and that ability to focus. Admittedly, like going back to our conversation earlier, like some of it may be our socialization or lack thereof that allows us to be like that very intense in our focus. Kind of taking it back, how to get started. Like I still feel like start with your project, a project you know really well. Now, don't look at the schematic. Just look at, pretend like somebody who's new to the project, who doesn't have any, it's like, can you reverse engineer your own stuff? Can you remove the binary? You already know what's in it, so you kind of know what you're looking for. But can you use that to learn the tools that are kind of the reverse engineering trade? I feel like knowing the project well enough it settles you in terms of what you're looking for, but can you find like the strings? Can you find, can you pull the data off? Can you try out like a decompiler and disassembler to like learn and understand that, because that can be a really good starting point for you.
That's how I got started with glitching too. I needed to glitch STM8 for a project, so I got myself an STM8 development board, like $5 thing. I put my own code on it and I locked it, and then I worked until I got the code out, and then worked on getting that more polished and reproducible before I tried it on the target device.
I think that's excellent advice. Add to there too, if you can find it, that community, the people who you can feel safe in asking, maybe naive questions with, because inevitably you're going to get stuck. And I think it is important to push through, but also sometimes it's nice to be able to phone a friend. And thank you guys for being a virtual friend. We can all phone in here.
Yeah, and that's a big one. Most of us have gotten stuck and get stuck all the time. And when you look at people's videos on YouTube, when you look at people's blog posts, they don't write down all the frustration, all the smashing head against keyboard that it took to figure that out. Sometimes you just got to take a break, come back after sleeping on it, and things make sense. But it's not as easy as it seems. But it doesn't mean that it's not doable. We all struggle through this.
100%.
I would also say that, like, maybe it's, and I can't say that everyone's your mileage may vary, but like, I think the biggest misnomer, I would say, the tech world is not the reverse engineering world. And I feel like the reverse engineering community, to me, is a lot more accepting or willing to be helpful and more friendly, I would say, than I would say the tech world is. I feel like tech world, there's a lot of posturing. I just, and maybe it just happens to be the people that I've interacted with, but they're willing to say, oh yeah, I couldn't figure this out, and they're not willing to cover up and make themselves seem like more than what they are. Like they truly come across as humans with their limitations and their willingness to learn at all points in time, and I think that's super important. I do feel like that's one of the things, kind of going back to like the videos which are all edited for time. I think if I remember correctly, Albert, correct me if I'm wrong, the crypto wallet video that
Joe
Grand did, even he said, like, oh yeah, this took hours. Like he did
try to show a lot of the frustration and just waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yeah. So like, I feel like video. And but I appreciated that he was willing to say that. I think we don't do a good job. I think society is
but Joe's a professional. He's been doing communication and reverse engineering for a while, so he knows
for decades.
He knows how to communicate that well.
Yes, I agree. But I think the thing is that I think that not everybody is acknowledging that, like, yeah, we hit our heads against things, or like, I think some people are better at acknowledging that they don't have all the answers, or that things were tough, or it took me some time to get through here. Some people do it, but like, I don't think that they're making a big show of it. But I think oftentimes we skip over that acknowledgement, and that makes it seem like people are just I just did it in 2 hours, and now I have millions of dollars. I don't know, but the point is that some of the stuff takes a lot of time, and you shouldn't take the length of the video as what you should expect in your day to day, because it certainly wasn't for them.
So stoke your curiosity, build your willpower, be humble, and link arms with some of the real ones.
Yeah.
As we wrap up here, want to say, do you guys have any kind of parting or final thoughts, and how might people best find you guys, hear and consume your work, and connect if you have anything to share on that front?
I'm going to stop giving out all my individual social stuff. Just go to my website, alvarop.com. That's ALVAROP.com. And then there's links there. And unnamedre.com is we have a podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, Alvaro. We still have a podcast. You can find me at RebelBot or RebelBotGen at the various social medias. Yeah, I don't have many parting words because I'm not dying yet. There you go.
The great and powerful Alvaro and RebelBotGen, thank you so much for your time and company and great conversation. You guys are excellent. Please keep making your podcast. It motivates us to do ours.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Likewise. Like, it's been fun catching up on yours. I think I'm 2 episodes left, but I've been enjoying listening to it. So
thank you, sir. Appreciate
that. It's good to be the spectator as well.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah, have a good one. Thanks, Del.
Thanks, everybody, for listening in. If you want to find more about show notes and how to contact us, you can go out to rep.show. That's REPP.show. You can also contact us via email. I'm Aaron at rep.show, and Del is Del at rep.show. Thanks so much, and we'll see you for the next one.
REPP.show. Nerd Talk IO.